So before we get started, what I'm going to do is just talk about some of the controls as we're doing animations. There's a few things that kind of were very confusing for me when I first watched my first videos on how to do animations. And that's some of the controls and moving between layout mode and animation mode. So when we're in layout mode, you'll notice I have my armature selected and I'm in object mode. If I come up here to this top menu and click on animation, you'll notice that it is now in pose mode. It automatically switches to pose mode when we go to animations. You don't have to be in pose mode. I mean, you need to in order to do your animation, but I can switch the mode to object mode and back to pose mode here. But that's one thing. Secondly, you'll notice that, and I've just created a TPos here to start in a start of a run, just to kind of demonstrate a few things. You'll notice there's nothing showing in this bottom window here when I select TPos. If I select an item, I see a yellow dot here that says foot right because that's what I selected. The only things that are going to show here for yellow dots showing that you have recorded a position of something when we're doing our animation is if you have that selected. If I'm going to remember to turn back on my screencast keys. Make sure you can see what I'm clicking. There we go. So if I select anything and I hit A to select all of my armature, you'll notice all of them are highlighted in blue. Now I can see dots and I can see an item on every single one of the items that are selected. If I collapse the summary, then it's just going to show one dot in the summary. So it shows all of my armature and all my names and a dot here because it's recorded the position of all of them. So another confusing thing is if I go in here and I go to my run animation, my start of my run, and we'll be going through this to do the animation, but if I go to my run animation and now I go back to layout mode, you'll notice it stays in that run animation. In object mode, if I go to edit mode, it goes back to my TPos. I don't want to work on the layout in this situation because then as soon as I go back to object mode, boom, it goes back to the new position. I can't work on it like this. So if that happens, all you have to do is go back to animation, click the drop down, go back to TPos, go back to my layout, and now I am in my TPos and it stays the same no matter what I do. So lastly, what happens if you start to make an animation and you make a mistake? You're like, I don't want that animation anymore. How do I get rid of it? And this is confusing. I've watched and searched for this, and a lot of people go, oh, you just simply go to this, you hit this X, and then it goes away. It unlinks the action. That doesn't make it go away. The only way to make it go away, and it's actually very simple to make it go away, is, let's just go over to here. So if you remember, normally we are in view layer mode. This is how it defaults. So we can see all of our items. I see my hat, my hair, my boy, mesh, my armature. This is a default, and we can see kind of all of our drawing elements. If I go over here and I go to blend file, blender file, this is all the elements that go into the file and organized in a different way. And you'll notice there's this actions drop down, and you can see here's my two animations that I've made, my TPos and my run. And I simply right click in there, click delete, right click, click delete, and now you'll notice down in my animation area that everything's gone because it has been deleted now. So, very simple way of clearing out things if you accidentally get things in there. And there is things that go in there. I do not understand everything about it. One thing to remember as you're doing these animations, and again, this video is specifically for animations for exporting to Unity. Animations can be used within Blender. You can make whole videos and movies within Blender using these animations and interacting in many more complicated ways. There's lots of options and menu items down here in the animation area for use for stringing together animations and making movies within Blender. So we will not be using any of those. We are simply going to be creating basic animations for bringing into Unity and then playing those animations as our character does things within our game. So that is the purpose of this video, is to show how to do those types of animations. All right, so let's get started making our animations. So the first thing we need to do is have an armature, of course, and it has to be married, parented to a mesh. And my previous video showed how to do all that. So we have our boy, we have our armature. So we come in here with our animation and we have nothing. We have no animations made yet. I deleted those. So the first thing we need to do is create a T-pose. We really have to have a T-pose. And there's a couple reasons. One, when you're in Unity, there's certain actions that only can be done if your character is in a T-pose, a T position, right? It looks like a T with his arms out. So the first thing we do is we make a T position. So all you have to do is select any of your bones. And if you don't see all your armature in your drawing, remember over here in this side menu, I have the little guy selected. You should see these options when you have your armature selected. And if you go under viewport display, there's this in front. You need to have in front clicked in order to see your armature through your mesh, because of course it's inside your mesh. So I'm going to press A. So I'm going to select all my items. I'm in frame 1. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to insert keyframe. We normally don't need to do this, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but for our first T-pose, we're not moving anything. They're all stationary, but I want to record the position of all of my armature. I want to record their location and rotation. So I click this. So you'll notice what it did is it added a dot on every one of my items in my armature, and it recorded the rotation and location of the armature in the T position. And I will click in here, and I am going to start with a 0 T position. And a lot of people do 0. I've not noticed that this always works, but generally this is how your character will come in when you drag it into your scene in an alphabetized order in your animations. So it's pretty common practice I've seen done. So we name it 0 T position. And then we hit this little shield. This little shield, I am not 100% sure exactly what this does. I've never seen it actually be required, but I know it interacts with the actual system in Blender. And there's another thing that I've always seen done. So we hit the little shield, we have our T position. So we have our first animation. So now let's get to making a interesting animation like a run animation. Now, one thing that I've done, and if you go to and just do a Google search for images for run animation, there's some pretty common run animations that show all the positions of the arms and legs in order to do a run. I have used those in the past. I also got a book on animations. If you're really doing a lot of animations, there's some pretty good books that have a lot of different animations from walks to jogs to different kind of runs and lots of other things, mainly for animators, but very useful in doing these animations in Blender also. So what we're always going to work with when doing an animation is keyframes. So these yellow dots really represent a keyframe, and you'll notice that command was insert keyframe. So in animations, keyframes were the frames that set the important positions of an animation, and generally an animator would come along, some other second-rate animator, not the key one, and he would fill in all the in-between frames. Basically, enough frames to smoothly show the position of all the limbs or whatever's moving between one keyframe to the next keyframe. Now, fortunately, our computer does this for us, but what we need to do is position all of our armature pieces at the keyframes. And the spacing between the keyframes is not super critical because in Unity, you can speed up or slow down how fast it rotates through the keyframes. So I usually space them out a bit more than some of the animations show. A lot of the animations show like keyframes for a run at 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 through. So basically you have 8 keyframes for your animation. So I space them out a bit more just so I have a bit more control if I want to tweak something. So what we're going to do, and there's a couple important things in creating these keyframes. One, see this little blue dot down here? What we want is we want to click on that. We want to turn automatic keying on. So we want that, click on that little blue dot. That means that anytime we have our keyframe position anywhere and we move any one of our armature pieces, it'll automatically be recorded and create a keyframe automatically for us. Now, the one thing, and you should get very familiar with this, is you're always going to want to do your movement in either side view, front view, or top view. It's very important that you do not move these things out of their plane when doing the runs. And I've made that mistake before, and you think it's going straight and it's not, and your legs get all wobbly and your guy looks very odd and not good. So generally, the side view is the #1 view that I usually use. For the legs, for the arms, at least to get them down, I use the front view. So what we're going to do first is we are going to think about when you're doing a run. So one, your person is going to go up and down. When you start running, you're going to start at a crouch. And so what we're going to do is just going to go, and I'm going to select our root node, come back to side view, grab it, and make him crouch a bit. So you'll notice that it recorded that in my keyframe over here. And we also kind of lean forward when we run. So I'm going to rotate and lean our person forward. So this is kind of a good starting position, right? And what we do is we are going to grab our foot and bring it out kind of straight and rotate a bit so his heel kind of touches the ground. And I am going to grab this item, his other foot, grab it and bring it back and rotate his foot down. Now the question is how fast do you think he's running? So really, it's up to you. Obviously, this is the artistic part. I'm just kind of showing some of the basic steps. So how far his leg goes back, whether his foot is rotated back and how far it is, depends on what type of run you want your person to do. So lots of different options there. So there's his feet at frame 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to frame 4. And in frame 4, he is going to crouch down a bit more. So first we have to grab this, go to frame 4. That's very important. It's very easy to forget that, and I do that quite a bit. We'll grab him. I'm going to squat him down a little bit more. And I'm going to grab this guy and bring it kind of under him. I'm going to rotate his foot there. This leg is going to come forward a bit more. Rotate his foot a bit. You see it kind of tips down a bit. Then we're going to go to frame 7, and I'm doing 3 frames in between each one. So what you'll notice is what happens if I drag this between these frames. You can see the computer has calculated the in-between frames between frame 1 and frame 4. So we're going to go 5, 6, 7, 3 more. And this is kind of the push off. So we're going to grab his front leg. I'm going to grab it, go back here, lift it up a bit, rotate a bit. Going to grab our root node. Going to grab that. He's going to come up a bit, right? Because he's pushing off with his left foot. We'll grab this guy and we'll rotate him. Now you can see, and if you watched my video, and if you didn't, you should know that we set up our armature with that inverse kinematics. And this is why we did that. You'll notice that his knees and legs are all bending correctly as I grab our pole, our control point, off his foot. So because we did set up inverse kinematics, it makes these animations much, much easier. Now, one thing we have to watch out for is you'll notice our pole target in front of our knees. If I try to grab this guy and go in front of that, what's going to happen is you'll notice his leg got all twisted. Remember, that is there so we know which way to bend the knee. So the one thing you have to remember to do is if they're getting close to his knees, you can just grab these. I'm going to grab them on the y-axis. They can be out as in front as far as you want, as long as they're always in front of where his knees need to point to. That's all you really need to do. All right, so let's check this. So we go from here. So he's coming down, heel strike, foot underneath, push off. All right, it's looking good. So let's go to frame 10. And I'm looking at all the keyframes on my other monitor here. If you're doing this, again, you can look at your image or your sketch of where your keyframes are and where the feet should be. We will be doing the arms. Don't worry about that. We're just doing the legs for now. So now he is going to be as high as he gets. And again, how high you want him to go, it all depends. Is he a smooth runner? Does his head bob up and down a lot? Not up and down a lot. It's really up to you. All these things are really dependent on, again, how you want him to look. So now his foot is straight back. I'm going to grab this guy, rotate him up. One thing I will suggest is that it is very hard to know exactly what it's going to look like when you run in Unity until you actually export it. You're probably not going to get it perfect the first time. Many times I export, I watch it, and sometimes his feet look like they're slapping down. They're not smooth. Sometimes the ankles just rotate way too much and it looks like his feet are flapping back. So it is pretty common to have to go over and do a lot of trial and error when getting all your animations to look correct. for how you want your character to look in Unity. And you also have to remember that how high he goes and how long he stays in the air also represents kind of the weight of your character. If you have a big heavy character, he's probably not gonna might not even get off the ground hardly at all, right? And he's gonna stomp down. So there's lots and lots of subtleties to these run animations that you have to pay attention to. But I'm just going through really all the basic steps that you'll need to do when doing the animation. It takes lots of trial and error just to get better at doing some good animations. All right, so we've got that. So now let's go to the part where he's totally off the ground. So we're going to go to key 13. Let's just looking at my keyframes over here. All right, so we're gonna grab this guy. So he is now totally off the ground, and when you run, right, you are at one point totally off the ground. How high off the ground, again, is going to depend on your character and how you want him to look while he's running, and how far you rotate the feet depends. All right, it's looking pretty good. Let's go to 16. Now the question is how long does he stay in the air, right? So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3 to 16. He's gonna come down a bit. Grab this guy, come down, rotate. He's gonna start his descent toward landing. Grab this guy, oops, grab him, bring him down a bit. All right, so we have all of his steps, and he's about to come down, and really the next frame is just going to be a reverse of frame 1, right? His left leg is straight, his right leg was back, his left leg next frame is going to go straight, and this leg's going to come forward a little bit. So what we're going to do is do the arms next. So let's go to front. Let's go back to frame 1. We're going to rotate his arm down, right? You're going to be at his sides. Let's go to our side view. Let's rotate this guy forward a bit. Now if we hit our numpad 9, it flips him around so we can see him from the other side. Rotate him up here, and again, what his arms exactly look like is up to you. Flip it back. So at frame 1, this arm is going to be back. So again, exactly what his arms do, it's up to you. If he's kind of jogging, his arms may not move a lot. If he's running a lot, maybe it does a lot more. But the basic arm movement is opposite of the leg. So when the left leg is forward, the right arm's forward. When the right leg's back, the left arm's back. All right. So let's go to frame 3. Again, I'm just kind of looking what I did before. Rotate him back a little bit more. Oops. Rotate this guy up. Maybe stretch out his arm, kind of like he's reaching out a bit. Go to frame 7. Remember, his leg is coming forward, so we're gonna bring his arm kind of coming back. His arm's gonna come back a bit. Go to frame 10. That arm even more forward. Let's flip around back, make sure we can grab this guy. Rotate him back a bit. Maybe rotate that forward a bit. Let's go to frame 13. Let's flip him back over like this. So now his leg is really stretched out. Rotate him down a bit. His arm's coming back further. All right. We're going to go to 16. His arms don't move a whole lot. Oops. Flip him back. It's starting to come back a bit. All right. So another important thing that I forgot to mention is that he has to be facing to the left. So when you look at front view, right? This is the x-axis. This is the y-axis. When you hit the numpad 3, he should be facing left. This will keep him moving in the positive z direction. You want to have him run in the positive z direction when you bring him into Unity. So he has to be facing to the left when you're doing all your animations, T-poses, everything. If you watched any of my other videos with the spaceships and everything, we always make everything face on the y-axis left in order to make them face in the right direction when bringing them into Unity. All right, so now basically what we need to do is all of the other keyframes that we need to fill in are really duplicates of these except mirrored. Now remember, we named our armature correctly, right, with the .ls and .rs, and because of that, Blender knows what the opposite armature that goes with the ones on the opposite side. So it knows there's a matching between the L's and R's. So what you can do is we can select all of these. So we copy them. I'm doing Control C. Now what I'm going to do is go 3 frames over, 1, 2, 3, to frame 19. And I'm going to right click, and I could do this through a shortcut key. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do paste flipped. So you can see I could have done Shift Control V, but I'm showing here paste flipped. And all right, let's select all these again. Let's do copy, paste, flip. There we go. Not sure why it didn't work right away the first time. So that's interesting. All right. So it looked like, there we go. No, that's correct. That looks correct. my movement isn't great through here, my spacing of my feet. Actually, well, that's why I don't think I moved my position correctly when from here to here. It's not a critical issue. You'll notice that when it goes from here to here, the spacing isn't quite correct. What you really want is from here to here to be an even spacing, like from frame 1 to frame 2. But I didn't quite get there. But it shows the basic premise of what he's going to do. He has a little hitch in his stride there. The last thing I need to do, the problem is what is going to happen after 34 is it's got to loop back, right, to the first frame in order to do a run. A run wants to loop and look smooth, but right now there's no keyframes between 34 back to 1. So what we do, it's the last thing we do, I'm just going to click outside, deselect everything. I'm going to select all of the items on frame 1. We'll just copy that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go 3 frames, 1, 2, 3, and I am going to just paste those. What it did is it created keyframes in between here to here. But what I want to do is, you'll notice that I have my end frame at 36, meaning it's going to go all the way to 36 and then come back to 1. So it put in the correct keyframes between 34, this is 37, but I'll never reach this keyframe. I'll come back to 1, and so now I'll get a smooth connection between my 34 and 35 and 36 back to 1. So now I can come back down here. I can hit this button for play. And yeah, it has that little funny hitch in there. Not great, but it gives a basic run animation. It shows it looks kind of like a jive walk, doesn't it? Anyway, that shows some basic animations. Shows all your keyframes. Again, you can copy and paste keyframes. You can delete items in your keyframes. Like, I'm not sure why. Oh, see this item here. That's my, what is that extra? That extra frame is on, oh, my upper arm. My arms were not, I did not move the keyframe correctly when I get my arm positions, that's why. So what you can do is you can just select these items. I can do Control X, I can move here, do Control V. Again, you can copy and paste these, delete them the same way. Oops. I always hit that delete key. Never get used to hitting X for deleting. Copy. So as you're fixing things up, again, you can copy and paste. You can zoom. I'm using my scroll wheel to zoom in and out, just to space them out a bit more as you're going. You can come in, you can adjust items as many times as you want. And you know what? I never copy and pasted my TPos. Just noticed. What you really want to do is to create a new one. Use this button to create a new item. In fact, I can do that. Let's do that. Let's go back here. What I'm going to do is I want to go back to my TPos. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all my keyframes. Actually, I'm going to select all of them. A for all. Let's just grab them all. Hit X. Delete keyframes. I'm gonna hit F2 here. Actually, I don't have to hit F2. Let's type run. Hit our little shield. Oops, what did I do? Oh, yes. I want to make this guy, I want to make run. There we go. Go back to 0 TPos. That 001. All right. So let's go back to. The problem is he's not in a TPos. So what we can do is, what is it? Alt G. Back to layout view. See, Alt G undoes all of the position to get him back. But now I want to undo all of the rotations. Pose mode. All. But my stupid overlay always takes Control, Alt G, Alt R. Alt R is supposed to undo all of the rotations. Interesting. Just do it the manual way. Not the end of the world. All right, back to the TPos. And you'll notice I didn't have to be in animation mode. It's another thing. You'll notice that even though I was in layout mode and I was in pose mode, it actually recorded. It recorded all of the positions at whatever my keyframe was in because I was already had TPos selected in on animation mode. So if it's easier to do it, like in that TPos, to get it back to where you want, you can certainly do that in layout mode. There's nothing magic about animation mode except you can see all your keyframes here and you can have access to all these other items. So now I'm going to go back to run. I go back to TPos. Oops. One misbehaving foot. There we go. I did figure out how to get that Control R. My NVIDIA card driver seems to be intercepting that Control R or Alt R and wanting to do something with it. So, but normally you can hit Alt R and it will reset all of your rotations back to 0 just like Alt G set all the positions back to 0, which basically goes back to your TPos. All right. So that was basic animations. Again, takes lots of practice. I would say that I am getting better at animations. It still takes me a while to get them all correct. And I can show you quick. That stupid thing is, there we go. We go here, I can show you some of my other animations that I've made. So this is one I was kind of following along with. So I have a run where he's leaning forward more and really stretching out. I made kind of a jog, see, where he's not quite, the reason that hitches because my jog I only made 28 frames. I'll set that back to 28. So you'll see that's him jogging. I set this back to 36. Go to my run animation. See, he's leaning forward more. He's really stretching out more. He stays in the air a little bit longer. And then I also have a walk animation. See, this is where my, let's see how many frames there is in that. I think there's only 32 frames in my walk animation. His hands look a little bit wacky, right? They look like noodle arms. I think this was my first walk animation. Again, not the greatest. You notice his little belly is popping out of his shirt there because of some issues that I showed last time when doing the mapping of the armature to the mesh. Sometimes certain parts of it need to be tweaked. And again, you're not going to see all that until you do all the animations. So you almost got to do an animation. You look at it and you go, well, that looks weird. And then you make another animation. And then the more you do it, the better feel you get. And again, kind of achieve your own style of exactly how your character is going to walk, how he's going to move his arms. Again, lots of subtle movements can make a big difference when doing your animations. And then I also have this robot one, which actually I use. You'll notice that here's the same jog map to my robot. It actually looks pretty good. I adjusted the feet a little bit to not have his feet rotate as much, and modified and tweaked some of the arm movement, but really not bad looking. And again, you can do lots of other animations. Here's one just of him punching, right? Going from a stand to punching something. So the same idea exists in any movement, right? You simply select your keyframe, figure out how he's going to move. And remember, you really have to think about the physics of what he's doing, right? In this case, he's stepping into the punch, right? To get kind of turning his hip, I turn my shoulder. So it takes some practice, but it's fun. I mean, this is the fun part. Once you get your character all drawn and shown how you want, you can really give them action. So the next video, I will be going into bringing these into Unity and showing how to actually control these animations and integrate them into moving a character around a scene. So please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Add a comment if you liked it or didn't like it. Any comment is welcome. And stay tuned for my next video.